Governor Kemp, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
We're coming out of a really big legislative session. Most people declaring you the biggest winner out of everything, giving relief back to Georgians at the venue that we are right now. You just signed a couple of bills, bringing money, putting pockets back into hardworking Georgians. I want to ask you about that, as well as the tort reform bill that did pass. How are Georgians going to see this benefit, and when will they see this benefit?
Yeah, well, listen, I would say that the people of Georgia won this legislative session. I thank the members of the General Assembly for that. I mean, my agenda is making sure that we're keeping our economy robust, stay the #1 state in the country for business, make sure that people got a good paying job and great opportunity, and then helping them deal with high costs that we've seen because of bad policies in Washington, D.C. over the last, 4 years or so. So really, everything that we were doing, whether it was cutting taxes, doing the tax rebate to put money back in people's pocket, doing tort reform, it was all really revolves around helping people fight through the high cost environment that we've been in, and making sure that our business environment continues to remain good, and that people have opportunity in this state no matter their zip code.
For those who ask, when will I be able to see some of this money back into my pocket, back into my bank accounts, what would you tell them?
Well, just signed the bill, so it'll be a few days, but we've done this. This is the 3rd year in a row we've done it, so the Department of Revenue is very up to speed on what they have to do for a tax rebate. So people that paid taxes last year, if you're a filing as a family, you'll be getting $500 back, so you'll either have direct deposit or you get a check mailed to you. If you're head of household, it'll be $375, and if you're an individual filer, you'll be getting $250 back. And so, they'll start processing that as quickly as they can and get the money flowing just like we've seen in previous years. And then on the tax cut, obviously we're dropping the tax rate again, 20 basis points down to 5.19%. When we started this, it was 5.75, so it's going to save Georgia taxpayers about $800 million a year. The other thing is it's making us even more competitive with surrounding states that have been cutting taxes themselves or have a different tax environment that we have. So I'm very excited about that. That's going to help on the personal side, but also help with our business environment here and on the corporate side. And really for people like Marty and I that for almost 40 years now have been small business owners, it's been tough out there for people, and we're fighting hard to let them keep more of their money in their pocket to take care of their employees or grow their business and not send it to the government. And we're just continuing to run government in the state of Georgia in a very efficient way, funding our priorities, making generational one-time investments, but then either giving people their money back or also at the same time lowering their tax rates.
Governor, I want to ask you this. Speaking of taxes, some people see tariffs as a tax. Clearly, no matter which side of the aisle that you're on, there is a general consensus that there's a little bit of uncertainty right now in what's happening. If you were in that position, and I don't even want to speculate if you were, but given where we are right now, are we moving too fast? Would you do anything differently with what things are going right now?
Well, listen, the one worry I've said for months is going down this road is, potentially can increase cost or inflation, and then also create uncertainty with the consumer. In other regards, erode consumer confidence. And I think that's something that, I've said was one of my biggest fears of this. But also said that President Trump has a really good argument to make of going after countries like China that have really been unfair trade partners. And I think the American people, and I know myself, support that. So I thought the move that he made the other day to put the 90-day pause, on the big tariffs and really focus on China is the way to go. They keep saying there's a lot of people coming that are wanting to make deals. I take them at their word for that, and I hope that's the case.
So you see it as negotiation?
Yeah, and I think it's President Trump is a negotiator, and I think him getting people to the table. I think he'll cut good trade deals for our country, and I think in the short term that will be fine. If this drags out a long time, I think it will be problematic.
What would you suggest?
Well, I would suggest getting some of the trade deals done, which I think is exactly what they're working on. I've listened and read a lot and heard long, in-depth interviews from the people that are engaged in those efforts. And I take them at their word that there are people coming to the table and there's good things that are happening that we don't know about. But we just have to wait and see. I mean, it in my eyes, needs to be a short-term solution. Or at least show the progress that, like getting a deal done here and then another one done the next week, and showing the American people that this is the direction we're moving, this is why we did this.
I want to ask the same thing on the federal cuts. I know that you have said in the past that you're in agreement with right-sizing some portions of the government. Do you think that the way that it's being handled is too fast, or should things be pulled back and maybe examined a little bit?
Yeah, I think it would be really hard for me to answer that question because, you hear, the one bad thing that happened to one person, which is unfortunate for sure, and maybe could have been handled in a different or better way. But then you also hear the other side of the story of waste, fraud, and abuse that they've come upon, just some of the outrageous things that have been going on that they're actually finding and cutting back on. And, there's been a lot of debate like around the Medicaid program. If they're cutting Medicaid because we're not going to give benefits to illegal aliens that are in the state of California, then that is something that I can certainly support, because that would leave more money to help us get rid of our debts and deficits and, help drive interest rates down because we're spending too much money at the government, and really right-sizing things back to a pre-COVID environment, plus the rate of inflation. And I think when you explain to people that like going back to a budget that is where we were pre-COVID, plus adding the rate of inflation there, is very reasonable. I mean, there is no way that the federal government can continue to spend at COVID levels now that we're 2-3 years past COVID. I mean, we did not do that in the state of Georgia, so the federal government should not do that either. In the other states that are run really well, they're in the same position we are. We have budget surpluses, we have a great business environment. We're either giving money back to people or cutting taxes, or both, like we're doing in Georgia. And then you look at states like California, I think New Jersey, Maryland, New York, and others. They are proposing raising taxes on their people because they have budget deficits. Well, the reason is because they were so dependent on COVID era funding, and that now that funding is getting cut off, they're not in fiscal enough shape to be able to deal with that. And thankfully in Georgia, we didn't go down that route because we knew, this was going to be one-time kind of short-term money to help us get through the pandemic. It didn't mean that the government was going to stay at that level, in perpetuity. And so there's got to be a reset. And I think it's just incumbent on the federal policymakers and the administration to make sure that they just ad nauseum explain to people what they're doing, why they're doing it, so they can buy into that. And I will say that, even people like Elon Musk and others have said, like, if we're going to make mistakes doing this, it's a big project, and when we do, we're going to admit those and we're going to correct them and move on. And I think that's good. They need to continue to communicate with the people so they know that exactly what they're doing.
Governor, I want to ask you about just everything that your tenure since you've been leader of the state and coming up through it. A lot of people look up to you. They see you as the leader of Georgia because you are. And right now, a lot of people are waiting to see what you do before they decide their own aspirations for higher office. What does a campaign for a Senator Kemp look like?
Yeah, I couldn't answer that question just yet. I've told people I was really focused. I mean, I knew how hard our legislative session was going to be. I know how much work I felt like we needed to do in my next to last legislative session for the people of our state. Tort reforms, besides the tax cuts and tax refunds and hurricane disaster relief and other really important things that we did, I knew how hard the tort reform fight was going to be. And, most people in the stage that I'm in right now, next to the last session, probably wouldn't have tackled such a tough issue, but I really felt like that was something very important for our business environment in our state. I feel very strongly about that, and I felt like it was worth the risk of being defeated in that effort. Thankfully, we were not. We won that battle, and we won that battle for the people of our state, and I think it's going to be good for our state in the long run. And so I was really focused on that. I tried to put off any political decisions, discussions until we got out of session. Now that I'm out, we've got bill signings we're doing. Our daughter's getting married in just a few days, and so I'm focused on that, but I am starting to do a little diligence on what, my political career looks like or not over the next several weeks or month or so, couple of months, and then we'll let people know, once we get down that road a little bit further. But I just have started that.
Would you say that you are seriously considering something?
Well, when you're in my job, everything you think about is serious. There's not too many issues that don't weigh on you, that don't have negative and potentially positive, or negative and then positive or potentially negative effects. I think this certainly has a lot of gravity to it, but also, look, I'm still the sitting governor of my job every day, and I've done this for over 6 years now. As I get up every day working hard for the people of our state. That's what they elected me to do. I said in my first inaugural address that whether you voted for me or not, I'm your governor, and I'm gonna work hard for every single citizen. And I know we're not always going to agree on everything, but nobody's going to be able to say at the end of my tenure I didn't get up and work hard every day for our state. And that's what I'm doing every day. And also, thinking about what my future looks like, whether it's another run for higher office in the state of Georgia or other opportunities that I may have either in the private sector, and I've got a lot going on with the family right now, and so we're just kind of working through all those things.
So for wrongful convictions, HB 35, a bill has passed that would compensate wrongfully convicted Georgians $75,000 for every year of wrongful imprisonment. What are your thoughts on this bill, and do you have any reservations about it?
Well, we're doing legal review right now on every single bill that passed, because while some things that pass sound really good, there's potential conflicts with other statutes. There's the potential that something may be unconstitutional in there, and then there's the whole policy aspect of it. So what I do is we go through every single bill, our team does. So while the General Assembly's out and everybody's getting some R&R, our team is still hard at work doing a line-by-line review on every piece of legislation that passed. And so we will not sign anything until that's done, and then we have a policy discussion on what the bill does, what's the issue that this is tackling, and then answering questions that I or the team may have. And so I wouldn't want to specifically comment on individual bills until we get through doing the review process, because some things are not as they seem when you actually read the language in them.
So it's to be seen on if you would.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing bad about that. We're just doing the legal review now, and if the legal review checks out, then we'll sit down and go through the policy, and then I'll make the decision on whether to sign or veto.
Okay. Can I ask you, and I know Garrison, we're coming up,
Yeah.
Can I ask you just the idea of the bill, is that something that you think aligns with your views?
Well, in the past, the state has done this, and certainly I think it'd be appropriate for us to do it in the future with the correct financial means for the individual that was wrongly convicted, to make sure that there's restitution there, if you will. And I know the General Assembly's been very thoughtful on that process. And so, generally that is something that I would support without specifically, weighing in on that piece of legislation that we hadn't done the review on yet.